Welcome to Gab Sessions with Stephanie Marie, aka Gabbie. Today we are going to be having a very, very special guest who is a very dear friend of mine, Cindy Kojm with Kojm and Company. Cindy is an absolutely amazing coach, business and life coach, and she is going to share her journey with us and what she would tell her younger self if she had to do it all over again, where she's at in the journey, and how she can serve you. So let's get Cindy on here. Today, I'm joined by Cindy Kojm, someone who truly understands the long game of relationships, alignment, and meaningful connections. Cindy brings a grounded perspective to networking, one that isn't about collecting context, but about cultivating trust, clarity, and conversations that matter. What I appreciate most about Cindy is her ability to blend experiences with intention. She's built relationships that didn't just open doors, they shaped direction. And I think her story is going to resonate deeply with anyone who's ever wondered, am I doing this the right way, or is there a way that actually fits me? I also want to say that Cindy is an amazing friend. She has a very special place in my heart. I absolutely love her, and I know that you guys will love her too. So,
Thank
welcome,
you.
Cindy, and thank you for being here. And in the middle of my messy momentum and messy chaos, and as we move forward in our businesses, I mean, I think that's the honest conversation that we have to sometimes have with everybody is that it's not always pretty with a nice little bow on it as much as we would like it that way. So,
True.
I would love to open this up with you telling us a little bit about you, where you've been, and where you're at now before we jump into anything else.
Okay. Well, first, let me say thanks for having me. I was really looking forward to this conversation, not just because you're a friend, obviously, and we've worked well together, but I love the space where it's about connection, collaboration, and real growth. And I think what you're doing now, how you're shifting your business and how you're showing up in it, this podcast is really starting that momentum for you. And I'm just so honored that you said, "Hey, will you come on and talk?"
I'll probably have you back. Thank you so much.
So I think for me, so my story and what's inspired my journey in reinvention um, is that it's an ongoing story. It's never finished, right? And I've had many chapters and many decades. I was a military spouse. I was a stay-at-home mom for 22 years. I then became a real estate agent thinking, oh, this ought to be easy.
All right.
And the market was crashing and everyone was getting out of the business. And then it led me to mentoring agents and helping them build their business to eventually coaching. And through every chapter, there's always been this quiet underneath question: who am I and what's next for me? And I think for a long time, and I did what many women did, I supported everyone else's dreams. I
Mhm.
was the one everyone counted on, the control freak, the one who gets it all done. And I did that at the cost of my own health and well-being. We keep things running, we put our own desires on hold. And I didn't realize how much my identity had become wrapped up in being this person who needed approval and who needed to be needed.
Right.
And I think the turning point for me came when I realized over the past couple of years that I'd really become disconnected to myself, my emotions, and my own voice.
Yeah.
Um, and not because I didn't have one, but because I was so used to pushing it down and pushing it away. And I really just lost touch with who I was.
Right.
And so I think for me, this all has helped me, transition how I coach and what this looks like as I've entered my 60s, unfortunately. And I took this experience and created the Dream Method, which is a framework now that I use for all the women who come and coach with me, which normally are women who are at that place where they are disconnected. they're not living the life that they're truly meant to live. And I didn't start this work as a business. I started it because I wanted to come back to myself.
Well, don't you think that's how we often stumble across our most successful part of a business? Because it's a growth phase of, and I'm stumbling on my word, I'm trying to think of like you created your own framework, but that wasn't the initial goal at all. You were following, and because I've been with you during this journey, I can say that you've been following other people's frameworks. And like what I like to tell people is you need to create your own version of success. And then now you've created your framework of how you're serving your clients. And so, how do you help people get past, I guess, the shiny objects and all of those other things where we're thinking, oh, but I want to follow this framework or I want to follow that, or how do they buy into the dream framework? Like, I guess I want to know like what your thoughts are behind it and how people can benefit from it because you mentioned it lightly, but I want the people that are listening to this to know that there is a framework out there, yours, the dream framework, that may be more in alignment with helping them create their version of success.
Sure, I think for me, it became about, because my tagline, even as a real estate agent, it was dream it, believe it, live it,
Yes.
right? That was the tagline I started with. And it had a different meaning as a real estate agent than it did moving into coaching. But it's always resonated with me. And everything starts with the dream for me. And then I really looked at it and I said, as I've worked through, because I've done energy work,
Yes.
I'm doing human design work now. I've done the disc and am, certified in doing that. And all of those things, it all comes back to this one thing. And it's about we're spiritual beings living and having a human experience, not the other way around. And but we've lost touch with our inner knowing.
Right.
And so for me, the noise of the external and losing yourself in what you want is really what created the acronym DREAM for me. And it is discovery, remembering, evolving, acting, and manifesting.
I'd love it.
And you can't go from evolving to manifesting. You got to work through it in the steps. And as I've gone through this myself, right? So we all we have to first go, oh, am I willing to sit in this space and understand that summer discovery is doing some shadow work, looking at some things that you go, don't really want to go there,
There's a
right?
reason they call it shadow because it's a dark place.
But it doesn't have to be. And I think that's the great thing about discovery. I think we think, just like the word failure, right? We've given failure so much energy and weight. And I think we do the same thing with shadow. And when we sit and we look at it and we say, just what am I going to take away from this? And it doesn't have to be heavy. I think we're told, right? We're all told, oh, shadow work, we got to get deep. There's this trauma, there's this, there's everything. I've had trauma. You know my story,
Right.
right?
Right.
I was abused as a child. But I look at this and go, but what am I taking from it?
But that doesn't define who you are.
It doesn't define who I am. But I think we have to sit in and say, what did I learn from this experience? What am I going to take from this? And I can tell you that through the traumas that I've had, the biggest thing I took away from it was learning how to forgive, not just myself, but someone else, and being able to allow other people to walk their journey without judgment.
Yeah.
And that is a hard lesson to sit in and learn. But I tell you what, it makes life so much better.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I have to say that when we do the hard things, there the better comes out of those things. And you have to go through the trenches. You have to go through the hard things. You have to, I think, experience and, like you said, do it yourself so then you can share and help others. I think right now, because we're in a space, I absolutely love AI, you know that, but I'm also very much about being authentic, intentional, and I'm tired of people not knowing, not having experienced, but they're out there professing that they're an expert. And it's like, no, no, you're just attaching yourself to this particular shiny thing, and they haven't done any of the steps. They might have only done one of the letters in the acronym of the part of the dream. And we know it definitely didn't start with the discovery because no one wants to go there first, because that's the hardest thing is discovering and deciding. I think the D could be deciding as well. And we don't like to make big decisions. We don't like to make the hard decisions. So I think a framework like yours can help in different areas of someone's life. So which areas do you apply the dream framework to?
Oh, so when I look at how do I coach someone through a transformation, we look at the four quadrants of life, and I only work with four. I know that people have like this whole wheel thing going, and that's great. And I've done it, been there, trained on it, coached on it. But what I realized was that when we get into this whole wheel, it becomes overwhelming. And then we sort of sit in that space and go, well, ooh, that one's, and so it gives us too many things to push aside. Whereas if we look at truly what are the four quadrants of life, it's our health and wellness, our relationships, it's our vocation or our job, our business, whatever that means to you, and then our time and money freedom. And so when we look at those four quadrants and we say, what would I love in these four things? And where's my priority right now? And we only pick one or two as a priority. We can't have all four as a priority. It doesn't work that way. And so we go with where do we want the most growth and transformation right now? What quadrant, if I work on this one right this minute, is going to shift the other three? Because sometimes that's all it takes is getting your health in order and everything else shifts, or figuring out your relationships, right? And so we look at this in that perspective, and then we go through the method. And within that method, there are other things that we do, like sourcing, and that's a process in and of itself too. And so as we work through this, what I found is with the dream method and all of the different things that we work on inside of that, like sourcing, like what's your human design, what's your disc, how are you showing up? You have a faster transformation. And that for me was what my clients were really looking for. It wasn't about a big transformation. It was how do I have a faster transformation that's going to shift and change my life where it is right now and move me to what I want 3 to 5 years from now.
Right,
And then how do I get that quicker? Right? Because just because it's 3 to 5 years doesn't mean it can't happen tomorrow. That's all the mindset.
right. Because we all want immediate gratification.
Yes.
I'm guilty of that.
We
So
all do.
you said the one thing that, and I think I'm probably guilty of this. You said we make one or two things a priority. And when you say that, I'm still working on thinking I'm not sacrificing the others if I'm
No.
only focusing. So how do you address that without, people knowing that they actually need to coach with you? We're not going to give them the store away today, but I want them to know that because I know you helped me with this just because you often say, well, Stephanie, just because you're doing this doesn't mean that this. And I'm like, okay. But I often think if I'm focusing on one or the other two priorities, the others are being sacrificed. So, how do you do that? And you said it, but I think we need to come to it where people really hear it. How do you do that shift?
So I think we have to look at how our brains work to begin with, right? And, I've spent a lot of time sitting and understanding how the brain actually functions. And what happens is, I think for us, we say, oh, I have to do all of this because if I create a dream in my health and wellness, oh, and then I create a dream over here in my vocation, and I'm creating, I want this great relationship, and oh, and then I want time and money freedom. Well, I want it all. And I look at that and I look at and I ask women, and the biggest question is, which quadrant, after we've created the dream, which quadrant really needs your focus right now? And if you put your focus in, so for me, health and wellness, right? If I put my focus here and I do what I need to do here, those habits that I'm building, the behaviors I'm building, the things that I'm going to stop doing, that focus is there, all of a sudden I have more time, more energy, more focus for my vocation, for my relationships, to work in time and money freedom. And that's what happens is when we're focused in one area, and you might stay focused in that area only to get one habit started and then shift to another focus. And that's okay,
Yeah.
right? We're not saying you have to get to the perfect health before you can go do something else. That's not the goal of this. The goal of this is to say, let me figure out what's important to me in my health. Let me figure out what that next step is so that when I make that shift, it opens up for a shift in someplace else. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the momentum that then shifts us. And when we feel good, right? When the feelings start to come that lift that energy in whatever quadrant you're working in, all of a sudden it moves something else.
Right.
Because the higher our energy is, the more we're able to manifest, the more action we're able to take. But when we sit at a low energy level and everything's negative, or we constantly have this old story loop rolling in the background, nothing really shifts and changes. And I think that's what people need to understand. We become so disassociated with our life, and we spend so much time in the external world, in our environment, and what other people say, and what other people are telling us to do, that we forget that we have to come inside to make that change. And when we do that, and we come back to ourselves and we really go, this is what I want, this is what I would love, and that energy starts to meet the emotions, then all of a sudden there's this momentum that starts, and we're able to think differently, do different actions, and create something that we truly would love.
So do you think that 99% of the time, the first priority is the mindset, health, and wellness?
I think for a lot of people, it's either health and wellness, or it's our relationships. And
Okay.
I say relationships because so many people are looking for happiness outside themselves.
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out, where is the most important relationship that you have? And what's the next relationship that you want, right? And for some of us, we're sitting in this whole space of, you're either currently in a relationship and it's not working, or you're looking for the love of your life, right?
Right.
But we have to define what love is and what is the relationship you really want. And normally, what you're looking for in someone else is what you're looking for in yourself.
Right.
And so that becomes that work that has to happen within that quadrant most of the time.
Yeah, because that goes back to that you have to like yourself. You have to be comfortable drinking coffee by yourself, eating alone, like being alone with yourself. And earlier in the episode, you mentioned like you lost who you were. And you know my story and about what it's been. in what, 2015, 2014. Like I was going through that whole process and I would even look at a plate and go, do I even like that? Or do I even like this? Do I even like to eat that? Do I even like that music? Or, and I was questioning, I went through where, you know me, I'm extreme. I went down to the dirt level, down into probably the basement level of looking at everything, questioning everything. Do I really like wearing that color? Do I really like eating that food? Do I really like having these conversations? Do I really like that person? Do I want that person in my life? And, you know, my initial response was I built a huge wall and
Oh,
then I had to gradually deconstruct that wall. I would say that wall is still halfway there and I can just like peek over it, but I still keep it. And and that's probably a trauma
hmm.
response.
Wonder who needs to come back into coaching.
That's probably a trauma response. But, you know, I'm aware that that wall is there. The wall
Yeah.
probably has a gate.
But the awareness is part of it too, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
awareness gives us that next step,
Yeah.
right? And most of us aren't aware, right? We've just become numb. And I think more to your point about, being comfortable with being alone. Samantha, my daughter, who, her husband did a year deployment away.
Right. Right.
And one of the things she gave as advice to someone else when they asked her, how did you do it? And she said, I got comfortable being alone. And I look at that and I go, wow, now there's growth.
Right.
But we don't recognize it, right? And that was one of the things I had to tell her was like, you had an entire year to learn something that most people never learn, and that's getting comfortable being alone.
Yeah.
And and then when you know that you can do that, so many other things open up. And I think that's a really hard thing, especially, we're retired military ourselves. And, we did a lot of deployments and a lot of moves.
Right.
I think it was like, every 18 months I was, being shipped off to a new place to start a life with my kids. And it it just was really at times difficult. But it was you had to learn how to transition. And that's really what life is transitions. And when military spouses can learn to do that quicker and really get comfortable with being alone, they will find that that life is so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that it applies to everything. And I, you know, and I want to, I think often, and you and I have talked about this before, like I want to thank you for your service because we always think the men or the spouse, you know, the one out, because it could be a male or female, the one out in deployment, but the service is from the significant other and their children as well because you guys sacrifice so much. You know, my dad was in the military, but I didn't have the same military experience that others because he was, what do you call that? I guess active reserve and so he was an art. And so he came home every day. And I mean, yes, he did go travel and bring the most amazing gifts back always. Um, but he would be gone for weeks at a time. I remember when he got recalled, and that was the first time we really experienced it, or I did. My mom experienced it during Vietnam of him being out, but he got
Right.
an early out. You know, it was only 3.5 years, and then he was an art, but then he got recalled. And that was the first time, like, we didn't know where he was. We didn't know what he was doing. We did, you know, all of that. But I was an adult and I was like, oh my goodness, like, this is what people go through. But I never had the experience that you had. Um, and sometimes I think I'm a little jealous because you got to go to all those amazing places. But that's me being, you know, how much I love to travel. But I don't think people recognize the sacrifice that you and your family made. And I find it
Yeah.
ironic that your son is in the military, and then your daughter married someone who's in the military. And so you
Yep.
have what, three, four generations of military life going on?
Yes, and then my husband's dad was retired military, and then my grandfather was also spent a short time in the military, and so yeah, there's a lot of military service.
It's almost like once you get in, you can't get out.
That might be true.
Uh,
Yes, yeah, it could be, but it's a life that I've loved, and I don't think it's a life for everyone, but but I think if you're willing to, again, it's an adventure.
right,
Can you
right,
keep it as an adventure? Does it work that way for you? I
right,
think with that, it really becomes more of something that is just a phenomenal experience.
right, right,
But it is difficult, and I think for children, it's more so than probably the adults.
right,
It is a time of great adjustment for them.
right. Well, you and I always have the most amazing conversations, and we sometimes go down some insane rabbit holes. But I know that you are like the best coach ever, and I've
Thank
enjoyed
you.
your journey. And so, where you were and where you are now, if people are wanting to work with you, or they're just wanting to explore, whatever it might be, what do you offer? How can they get your services? And anything else that you want to tell us about your organization, company name, where you're at on social, like all the things, you know me, all the things. We want to know all the things of how to get hold of the amazing Cindy Kojm.
Thank you. Well, you can obviously go to my website, which is kojamandcompany.com. And I do, you know me to with technology stuff, it's always, is it working or not working? I don't
So
know.
what's the best way to really get a hold of you?
You'll go check it. You can always send me a DM, a message through my Facebook account, which is either you can go to my personal account, I don't care, which is Cindy Kojm, or my business one, which is Kojm and Company. You can email me, cindy@kojamandcompany.com. And I'm happy to send you a link where we can get together on a 20 to 30 minute conversation where we can talk about what's going on with you, what would you love to see happen, and what's your next best step? Because maybe it's coaching with me, maybe it's doing something different. It's not for me about talking someone into coaching with me. I feel for me and what I've learned through relationships is that you have to be in alignment for it to work.
Right,
You can take on anyone that's willing to pay or, who you think, oh yeah, I can't let this opportunity go. But we all have to listen to that inner voice and knowing and saying, is this really what I want? And is this person the person who can help me get there?
right,
And that starts with first a conversation. And
right.
it requires us to ask the questions about what would you love? And am I that person to help you get there? And hopefully I am.
But I know you, if you're not, you have no problem telling people I am not the one.
One. And that again is part of growth, right? Is really being able to put someone else's needs ahead of your own and not feel like you're losing something. And I think in the business world, especially for business owners, we're so afraid of losing business. And you can lose business by being connected with the wrong people just as easily
Yeah,
as you can gain business.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And for those people that don't know, Kojm is Kojm.
four
And
letters,
four
four.
letters. Four difficult letters to put together, but four letters.
Yes, four letters.
And I'll have all the information in the show notes. Of course, if people want to reach out to me, I can definitely connect them with you. Is there anything else I have one other question before we wrap up. and I ask this to everybody because I'm very curious about it. What advice would you give your younger self? And you can pick any part of younger, whether it was a teenage, 20, 30, 40-ish.
I think for me, what I would say to my younger self is to be curious. I think that as I grew and even when I was younger, everything was black and white. There really was no gray area. And now in my 60s, everything's a gray area, right? Like, we just have to ask curious questions. And I think it would also be ask yourself what questions. Get out of the how, because it shuts the brain down if it doesn't know. Get out of the why. The whys become the excuses. Go to the what. What can I do? What's next? What would make this better?
I love
What's in this for me?
I love that.
Go to what?
I love that. So,
Thanks.
on a final note, what would you like to share with us or anything? Is there anything else? I almost hate to interrupt that because that was I love that. I love what. Now, people in
Yeah.
my life are going to be mad at you because I'd be like, what is that for? What? I'll be acting like a toddler. What? Instead of why?
I don't know. I think that for me, I think that if there's any part of this that's tugged at your heart, or if there's just this quiet sense of, I know there's more for me, I want you to trust that because that's your spirit asking for attention. And if that means looking for support, exploring something different, then I really invite them to come to a vision to action clarity session and to see what is spirit saying to you and what would the next thing look like? There's that what question.
What? What?
What?
I love that. Well, Cindy,
Thank you so much.
thank you so much for sharing your story, your perspective, your guidance, and your honesty. I really appreciate it. I appreciate our relationship more than you know. I think you know, but I still like to
I
tell
do
you.
know. I do know,
And
dear.
I want to thank everybody for listening, and all the details will be in the show notes. So, again, thank you.
Thank you, honey.
You're welcome.